Welcome to the Humble ISD Advanced Learning Podcast, where our goal is to talk about anything and everything related to advanced learning in less time than it takes for you to get from home to school or work. I'm Dr. Tong Uticrit, the Director of Advanced Learning for Humble ISD. In today's segment, we wanted to talk about one of the most premier options related to advanced placement here in the district, and that's the AP Capstone Diploma. And joining me today for the conversation are Sarah McKinney and Sarah Prather. Sarah McKinney is currently an assistant principal at Kingwood High School, but prior to serving in this role, she had the opportunity to teach AP Research and Seminar. She's now taken her love for advanced learning to lead advanced learning at Kingwood High School. Additionally, Sarah Prather is the current AP Capstone teacher for Kingwood High School. So welcome to you both, and thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having us.
I think a lot of our community that are already engaged in advanced placement classes, they have familiarity with advanced placement in the sense of that, okay, I'm in the course, I take the test at the end of the year to see if I get credit. But what is it specifically about AP Capstone that makes it so different from the other advanced placement courses we have?
So AP Capstone, while there are standards that are set from College Board that you have to teach, it's not like a set curriculum. So there's a lot of freedom for students to be able to practice skills, and it's very skills based. So you don't have to ever memorize terms or facts. And while there is a small sit-down component at the end of the year, what's really unique about this course is that the work that students are doing predominantly in the second semester of the class is what is scored and counted towards their AP score. So that's the junior year. And then the senior year, the entire year, the project that they work on, that's their AP score. So there is no sit-down test. And the course is very, very focused on research, argument, presentations, writing. And these are skills that are transferable to any other course that these students are taking, regardless of the, on-level or advanced placement classes.
Feedback that I've gotten from former students is that of all the classes that they took in high school, their AP Capstone courses prepared them best for what they are currently doing in college, because it has not just that research and that writing piece. They also need to understand how to read an argument and interpret an argument. So they're interacting with scholarly journals and articles as juniors and seniors in high school that they don't necessarily get an opportunity to work with before college if they're not an AP Capstone. They also have an opportunity to work in teams in a way that is a little bit different than the typical group project, because every kid is responsible for their own unique part of it. And there are clearly defined roles that College Boards kind of got set up for them. So they're learning how to work with one another, how to solve conflict in an academic setting and do all these pieces. The whole course itself was created by the College Board to address that missing piece, because they were getting this feedback from college professors saying, they take a full load of AP and dual credit classes and they come to us and they can sit down for a multiple choice test and they can read the textbook and they can write a short answer essay. But they're struggling with the research piece, and they're struggling with the independent learning and the independent inquiry. So that's kind of why they developed AP Seminar and AP Research, to fill in that gap. And with AP Research, it's very similar to the work that a student would do their first couple of years as an undergrad or throughout their undergrad program. And then AP Research, if they go on to do a senior thesis or a master's degree, it's a little bit more similar to that. So it's really giving them a unique opportunity in high school with a lot of support from a teacher to learn those skills before they're on their own.
So when we talk about AP Capstone, really we're talking about two separate courses, right? It's a two-course progression consisting of AP Research and AP Seminar, right? So in our district, we've opted to say that we're going to offer that at the junior and senior year level. So that's that pathway that they would take, is at the junior year and the senior year level. And so I would love to take a look at these courses separately for a moment, right? So what course do students typically take first, and what does their experience look like?
So AP Seminar would be their first course with it. It's actually the class I had the most experience teaching. I worked with that for 5 years. With AP Seminar, students they're learning those introduction to argument skills, where they are learning how to analyze an argument and learning how to create their own. So they've got a group component with it and then an individual component. In the class, they're building those skills first semester, but that second semester is when they get cut loose to kind of do their whole AP exam. So part of that is the group project, where they work in teams to identify a problem or an issue that they'd like to solve or come to a resolution about. And each kid within the group gets to research that issue from a different lens or a different way of thinking. So if you had a group of kids that they wanted to talk about the nursing home system in the United States, you have one student who really cares about politics. Law school is their goal. They're looking at it from a political and a legislative side. But you've got another kid that they're looking at this and they want to learn about the medicine. They want to look at the medical effects, and someone else may want to look at the economic side. So students can really tailor these projects to their own personal interests and their own personal college and career goals. They work as a team to, research these individual components and then get together to create a team argument. And then later in the semester, they work on an individual basis to kind of do the same thing. So you can kind of see how College Board's already scaffolded in. They start with a group, they've got a little bit more training wheels, and then they work on their own to research a topic and create an individual argument and an individual presentation with it. So again, very similar to what you did as an undergrad, looking at outside research and creating your own argument.
Well, and really taking it beyond that, right? It's this idea that a lot of what I'm doing is even directly applicable to master's level or even doctoral level research, right? And Sarah, I think Prather, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, that there's not a set curriculum, right? So students are really learning how to engage with the material. And I think ultimately what is also important is that they're learning where their voice is. They're finding their voice in this research space and saying, what is my contribution going to look like in this area, right? So I might be interested in nursing homes, but from this aspect. And so what does my voice have to say in this space as I engage with the content? And so after completing successfully the AP seminar course, what does it look like when I decide to take AP research in that next year?
So AP research builds on the skills that AP seminar set as the foundation. So they need to take AP seminar before they can take AP research. And the first thing that we do is come up with a topic idea that students are interested in. So the ultimate goal of the course is by the end of the year, students have written a 4,000 to 5,000 word paper, and then at the end of the year, they also give a 15 to 20 minute presentation and do an oral defense of the topic that they have researched, and they're designing and implementing their own original research. The biggest challenge, I think, for students is actually at the beginning of the school year, coming up with a topic, narrowing down their focus. They do a thorough review of the literature and that's what they've learned to do in seminar. They're proficient at conducting research. Lowercase r research is what we say in the Capstone program, and they identify a gap in the existing literature. Like, this is an area that's underexplored or completely unexplored. And so then they come up with a research question that they want to pursue for the rest of the year. And then from there, they learn about conducting ethical research, designing a research study, different types of research methods, and how do you choose the most appropriate method for the goal of your project. And then in the spring semester, they're executing that study, and from there they analyze the results to come to a new understanding, which then they present and share at the end of the year. So
Man, in the words that you're using, right? And for our listeners, I want you to think about this, especially those that may have done maybe some graduate work or even some postgraduate work, right? I mean, the terms that you're using, like a review of the literature or identifying a gap in the research. I mean, that is graduate level work. I mean, this is not undergrad stuff anymore. I mean, this is graduate level thesis, dissertation sort of work. And so how cool is it that our kids are getting that experience now, so that I can only imagine that they're doing it now as high school juniors and seniors, to imagine how successful they will be when they get to that post-secondary level.
One of the things that I really do love about the whole program, though, is it is already differentiated, that it is accessible to students of different skill levels. From the start, they're really able to, if they are a weak writer, that's okay, because we've got the structures in place to help build those skills in. Or if they struggle with, reading those articles that are a little bit heavier and it's not a narrative, it's hard to read a scholarly journal, they really do learn how over time to pick up on those things, because they can pick something that is more appropriate to where they're at that point. And it's such a good benefit for them to have that teacher there to help guide them through that whole process. Because it sounds very daunting when you say, doctoral level work, but I mean, really these kids, their projects do vary based on, their skill level and what their interests are and what their end goals are. But I think what's so important about this is that the emphasis is on the process and students learning the process and understanding the research. And it's making them more responsible readers, more responsible writers, regardless of, how grand their project is at the end.
So talk to me about what skill sets I would need as a student to be successful in this AP Capstone program, right? If I've got a student or a parent listening to this and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. What skills do I need as a student in order to be successful in this course?
I had a lot of students taking AP seminar, and that was their first AP or advanced class as a high schooler, that this was their aha year because they knew it wasn't necessarily based in one content area. They knew it had writing, but it wasn't an English class, and they didn't really care for literature, but they cared for a certain topic or they had certain interests. So, for those students coming in, I think a willingness to work hard and being comfortable stepping out of their comfort zone, being willing to work with others, and just having a good work ethic is almost the biggest piece of it. There's not, yes, we want stronger, if they've got strong writing skills and they've got strong reading skills going in, it's going to make it easier on them. If they have something that they already know they're very passionate about, it does make it a little bit easier for them to find topics. But at the end of the day, this is an all kids course, and any kid who's wanting to put in the work, they can get there by the end of it.
Yeah. What are you seeing on your end, Sarah Prather?
I think you need to be inquisitive. Mm-hmm. A student who has a topic, the students that I see get the most out of this class and who are the most successful are the ones who are genuinely inquisitive and want to learn about the topics that they're exploring. Mm-hmm. And they are very purposeful in their choices, in the things that they choose for their projects, their junior year and especially their senior year, because they genuinely have that drive to explore and answer that question that they're focused on.
Right, absolutely. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit already earlier when we say this is not a set curriculum course, right? Like in terms of like the content, it's not a set curriculum. A lot of that is generated by the students as they're doing this research. And I mean, this is a rigorous course. They're going to be doing a lot of researching and writing and rewriting. And there's going to be some challenging times in there where they're needing to do that over and over again. And ultimately, it's going to be that passion for that topic that they're interested in. They so want to learn more about this that's going to help them carry through those tough times. So, I mean, obviously, you guys have been involved with AP Capstone now for a little bit of time. You've worked with a lot of kids. Can you give me your favorite AP Capstone success story?
So, one of the cool things that I experienced was one of my former students. He is a student at University of Houston, and he is pursuing a career in STEM. And he said he sent me an email. He said, "Today I landed a job as a student worker program assistant at the U of H STEM Center," and he said, "I found myself talking quite a bit about my experience in AP Capstone." So the skills that he learned from AP Seminar and AP Research, he specifically outlined stuff from both classes. He was able to use that to help him land this job in what I'm assuming was probably a competitive pool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I had several students that, reported back to me that they were able to use their AP Capstone experience to help them answer questions in interviews for college admissions. The Ivies and those bright, shiny schools, they like to have students sit for interviews, and it gave them something to talk about that was both something they were passionate about, but also something academic, which I think helps set them apart in that application process. But then, students working for local scholarships or other scholarship opportunities, to all of our schools in the state of Texas could use that to help them set themselves apart in those interview pieces. And I know a lot of my kids were able to do that. But like Sarah said, we had several kids that were able to get research jobs and work in their university labs early on because they had that capstone experience too.
Well, and even to take that a step further, like we talked about this a little bit before already, but it's students finding their voice, right? If I didn't already have my voice before this, by going through this course, by the time I do all the research, by the time I go through this final defense, I've got this confidence, this swagger that I know what I'm talking about, and being able to find my voice and translate that later on into a skill set of whether it's be an interview to land a research job in my field, or even to take it a step further and to be able to get an opportunity that may typically be reserved for an upperclassman. But since I am confident in what I've done, I know the research that I've done, to be able to do that earlier than others is amazing. So look, that's all the time that we have today for the Advanced Learning Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media on Twitter at humbleisd_ADV. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be notified when we drop a new episode talking about anything and everything related to advanced learning. This has been Dr. Tong Uticrit, and this has been the Advanced Learning Podcast, keeping you ahead of the learning curve in Humble ISD.